A business owner has detailed the gruesome reality of what is happening in Alice Springs. Resident Darren Clark, who you know well by now, shared a shocking story on 2GB with Ben Fordham yesterday about a 6-year-old boy who self-harmed after witnessing his 15-year-old sister being raped. Joining me live now is former Northern Territory Police Officer Carey Joy. Carey, thanks so much for your time. Do you know much about this case?
This case in particular, no. Only snippets, that I've heard from the news, and obviously speaking with Darren himself, who I'm business associates with in town. So I've only this one. Yeah.
As a former police officer, though, does this kind of incident still shock you, or is it going on more often than we think?
Look, it does still shock, and for probably lack of better words, it haunts myself and several ex-police officers and has done for decades. This stuff occurs so frequently in our region. It's as I've said before, it's Australia's dirty little secret. The stuff that goes on here, most Australians would not believe. There's no exaggeration in the things you're hearing at all.
So we're talking about 15 years of combined service with Northern Territory Police and as an AFP federal agent. Can you tell us some of the things that do still haunt you?
Okay, so sorry, it's a bit upsetting.
Sorry, Carey. Sorry,
okay.
I really caught you unaware there.
It's okay. So firstly, I need to obviously start by saying that, this is not a negative thing towards Indigenous people at all. So some of my closest friends, work colleagues, and some of the most beautiful people I've dealt with in my life are Indigenous. But the scary facts of things that go on in our community just can't be ignored. In my career, I've been to children that aren't even 1 year old that have been raped, sexually assaulted. Myself and other officers, this is quite confronting, but we've had to euthanise animals before that have human venereal diseases. The things that we see are just unbelievable.
Mate, I can't imagine. And this is, I don't talk to you today out of some kind of weird voyeuristic, need to hear these shocking stories, but I'm just so shocked that we don't know about some of these things, that they are swept under the carpet. I think the media needs to do a better job as well, and I know I sit here in the comfort of Sydney, but what does need to happen?
Well, it's massively, it is kept a secret here. All government employees, we're on very strict media policies and we're not allowed to discuss this stuff at all. We live and breathe it day in, day out, but we are not allowed to talk about it. Even a scary thing, if we look back at, the NT government put out a sexual violence prevention document back in 2020, 2028, and some of the statistics on there are absolutely terrifying if you have a look at it. Like, you wouldn't think we would need to have a statistic of children between 0 and 9 years of age that are sexually assaulted in the Northern Territory. The statistic was done in an average of 100,000 people. So in 100,000 residents of Australia, in the Northern Territory, 63 Indigenous children, boys, between 0 and 9 years of age are sexually assaulted. And the statistics keep going. I've got another one in front of me, which is, in the same 100,000 group between girls, Indigenous girls between 10 to 14, 878 of them are sexually assaulted every year. And it's just staggering. And nothing's done about it. And it's not told to the media. We're all on very strict policies, as I say, and our statistics are highly manipulated. This is all would have at least doubled or tripled since the removal of the Stronger Futures legislation, which we had the alcohol assaults and violence are up over 60%, 67% increase in alcohol-related assaults. As you've seen with our commercial break-ins and residential break-ins, they have skyrocketed. So there is no way that this has not also flowed into the sexual assault areas of our criminal statistics. But what's occurring to children and women and the family groups of our Indigenous, brothers and sisters is absolutely horrendous.
So from the statistics that you read out to us this morning, it's hard to get your head around, to be honest. If you haven't been sexually abused by the time you're 14, boy or girl, you're one of the lucky ones.
Yeah, and with the numbers that we're given, and this is prior to the Stronger Futures removal, that's 300 less is the national figure. So 570 sexual assaults nationally around the whole country. Yet in the Northern Territory, 878 alone are Indigenous. It's with 300 people more likely to be sexually assaulted as an Indigenous youth in the Northern Territory than you are anywhere in this country. It's beyond belief. And we have, I suppose, the thing that annoys us the most, and you've heard a lot from Darren, which thankfully he's been able to get a lot of the media involved in this, but we see the Prime Minister and all these people carrying on about wanting a voice and needing a voice in Parliament. I mean, he flew here and was here for less time than we would spend at a family barbecue, probably in the midst of Australia's biggest Indigenous crisis, probably in the last decade. And he's here for less time than he spent at a barbecue. And, if you want the real voice, go out on the street and talk to these Indigenous people, not come here, sit in an air-conditioned office, have a meeting with politicians and a couple of people from Indigenous groups that they're not the target group. The real voice is on the street here, and he doesn't even speak to them. It just seems like a big media game for them.
Yeah, and the kids. I don't think we talk about the kids enough, because it would seem to me if sexual assault is so high amongst Indigenous Australians and perpetrated against children, this, Carey, says to me that it's a generational cycle, that the abused have become the abuser, and it's just happened time and time again.
Yeah, 100%, and that's what happens. We don't fix the problem. We'll have big speeches and everything come out of Canberra, buckets of money thrown around, but we do nothing to stop the actual problem. Myself as a police officer, a young constable, we had a rape occur of an Indigenous woman in the car park of our police station, and the offender was not prosecuted due to age. We had diversionary issues, all the rest of it. So he was released, and then 8 years later, I attend a rape at an Indigenous community where a 7-month-old baby has been raped by the same person. That we don't break the cycle. We're not changing it. And that's a large reason why I had to leave the job, and so many do, because it tears you down that you see these kids.
Yeah, mate. I feel you. A 7-month-old baby. And then you see this time and time again, and you don't see anything changing. Is there support for police officers like yourself? Is there enough?
There are avenues for it, but there's definitely not enough. And this is why we see, I suppose, in our, especially the NT police force right now. We're in the middle of the most dysfunctional, unethical management we have ever seen. Our commissioner it just seems to be pure ego and nothing more. So this is why we see so many long-term serving NT police officers leave the job. The sick leave, the PTSD struggles are unbelievable. And, sadly, over the last couple of years, we've seen record suicides with police officers in the Northern Territory. It's just that there is definitely not enough done. And even now, it seems we have our commissioner targeting police officers that are off on extended sick leave, trying to medically retire them. This is the last thing you do to a police officer struggling with this stuff, is take their employment away when they're on leave. There's definitely not enough done. Definitely not enough. I've been out of the job 8 years, and I can't talk about this without crying. It's just, yeah.
Mate, I feel you. And look, I know what a big deal it was to talk to us today, so I really appreciate you doing that. And you, others like Darren, at a loss to try and get something to change. And so we're going to keep on and telling your story, telling the stories that need to be told. We really appreciate your time, and you, Carey.
Thank you. Thanks, Laura. Thanks for trying to shed some light on what we're struggling with. Thank you.